Gemara. Sorry. You might as well turn around and go back home. We are by Rabbi Zira, which is approximately halfway down the Amud. Okay? Before we get in, it's probably good to chazer over what kind of machlokas we had yesterday. Even though today the Gemara will do mess them up. Well, actually, I changed my mind. Let's just start, and then we'll come back to it. The words of Rabbi, let's start 2 lines before that. Just it's good to start before that. Rav Chisda. He said, Rabbi Shimon holds, we don't go after whether you do a mitzvah. But if you mal a kid Erev Shabbos, and if you mal a kid on Shabbos, who's supposed to have his bris milah on Friday, even though you're Makai mitzvah, because it's after the 8th day, that doesn't matter. You're still not considered to be Torah b'dvar mitzvah. When you consider to be Torah b'dvar mitzvah, according to Rabbi Shimon, only if that Shabbos there's a kid who's supposed to be mal. So let's say if you mal the Shabbos kid on Friday, the Friday kid on Shabbos, forget it, you're not a Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Because on Shabbos there's no head to be mal, because the kid who's supposed to be on Shabbos is no longer here. So only have a kid who's not supposed to be on Shabbos, you're not Torah b'dvar mitzvah. So it says Rav Chisda that similarly, in a case where by Korban Pesach, the only way you can be potter because of Torah b'dvar mitzvah, if you bring a korban which is ultimately not good, let's say you bring a korban which is supposed to be an olah as a Pesach or whatever the case may be, which is not proper. So it's only if there's still a chabura left to shech that day, right? Because that way it's still shayach the mitzvah pace is still shayach, so you still consider to be a Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Amra Rabbi Zira said, Milsa de Rabbi Yanai Amra, the words of Rabbi Yanai argue, V'sheshachu mal et shel Shabbos erev Shabbos. The Rabbi Yanai says that even if you forgot and you were mal, the kid of Shabbos on erev Shabbos, then that's still considered to be a valid form of Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Okay, so if you have the kid, you're mal the erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos,
There's another child here.
Yeah, no, it has to be another child, right? That'd be 2 children here. If you've mal the Shabbos kid on erev Shabbos, then you're chayiv, right? Which is show mal Shabbos erev Shabbos, you're chayiv. If you mal the erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, but you did the Shabbos kid erev Shabbos, then there's no way you can be potter. So he also agrees with Rabbi Chisda that in order to be Torah b'dvar mitzvah, you have to actually have the capacity to do Shabbos. But the difference between Rav Chisda is Mola b'shachris. What if he did the bris milah in the morning on the Shabbos kid, and then he did the erev Shabbos kid in the afternoon? So in that case, chronologically,
there's no child there. It's like there's no chabur.
No, but he argues. That's besides the point. Rabbi Zira is Omar Sab Rabbi Yanai Potter. Since he had a heter earlier that morning, that heter works later on. That's precisely his machlokas with Rav Chisda. Because it said the heter has to be there at the same time that you're doing the what you think is the mitzvah. Rav Zira Yanai says even was there this morning, that suffices. Okay, you don't have to have the heter right now. Okay. Says Gemara, Rabbi Abba Mar Chayev. Rabbi Abba argues and he holds your Chayev, which is similar to Rav Chisda. V'layda mila Amar Rabbi Yanai. So if that's the case, why did the Mishnah Shabbos talk about where you did the bris milah for the kid on Shabbos, for the Shabbos kid on erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos? A better case for the Mishnah to have discussed would have been where you did 2 on Shabbos, right? One in the morning, one in the afternoon. So it's going to tell you how this occurred that the kids got switched. Because usually you're not going to be a klutz enough to do both in one day. You'll switch them, you just do them the opposite days, the wrong ones. Okay? Al daiti to Rabbi Zira. Now, according to Rabbi Zira, Rabbi Yanai, here the next 4 words are absolutely meaningless. They don't mean anything at all. And therefore, Going back, stretching back this, Reb Chaim Kanievsky in Shabbos changes the words. I looked at my notes in Shabbos, so the sugi is identical. And there, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, it's supposed to be read, Al Daiti Rabbi Zira Rabbi Yanai, the Lok Rav Chisda. So obviously not like Rav Chisda, right? Because the Chisda said you need to have a chabur in front of you, which is still shechli. Whereas Rabbi Zira, named Rabbi Yanai, says even if there's one still in the morning, that suffices. Now, Omer Rabbi Yimana kum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yimana said for Rabbi Yossi, very interesting thing. I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but this is what he says. He says, Ma'adam Rav Chisda Rabbi Shimon. Rav Chisda says like Rabbi Shimon. Right? Rav Chisda says in Rabbi Shimon, the svara is not that you're doing a mitzvah, you don't look at that, but rather whether there's still a potential to be Deichel Shabbos. And that's what he said, he still have a chabura for the later that day. Fine. I'll die, Madam Rav Chisda Rabbi Shimon. But Madam Rabbi Yanai Rabbi Meir. It follows Rabbi Yanai should say like Rabbi Meir. If the Rav Chisda like Rabbi Shimon, so Rabbi Yanai Shita must be going Rabbi Meir. And in fact, in a few moments we'll explain the machlokas like that. But his kasha is that wait a minute. That can't be. Can't be because the way we explained Meir before, Rabbi Meir is saying that that as long as you did a mitzvah, regardless of whether Shabbos you had a dispensation of the Shabbos. For example, if you only have the Erev Shabbos kid left on Shabbos, still you're considered to be a Tov B'Dvar mitzvah. Why? Because you thought you're doing mitzvah, and it was a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah which you weren't allowed to do today, but it was a mitzvah because it's after the 8th day. Right, so he says, if that's the case, Rabbi Meir should be like Rabbi Yana, Rabbi Yana should be like Rabbi Meir, but it's not. Rabbi Yana has also is on the continuum of Rav Chisda. In other words, he holds according to the Shita coming in the middle. Let me see if I can recap quickly. By the way, before I tell you, Ervin Perakei, Halach Aleph. Okay. We have a machlokas Rabbi Yanai and Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, you want to write that down first? It's Chichu Sofrim Halacha, that's the language. Rabbi Yanai says that Rav Chisda says that the only time you're potter in Tov B'Dvar mitzvah, if there's still a chabura which has yet to shech the Korban Pesach today. Okay, that was the last thing we learned yesterday. Rabbi Yanai argues and he says, even if there was somebody who didn't shech this morning, as long as there was the heter earlier today, it doesn't have to be in front of you, it can even be behind you already. Okay, now the Gemara says, okay, look, Rabbi Chisda says explicitly to go like Rabbi Shimon. So it stands to reason, and again, I don't know if the Gemara assumes this, but the Gemara assumes stands to reason, Rabbi Yanai to Rabbi Meir. But that cannot be, because he said yesterday that Rabbi Meir's whole concept of Tov mitzvah is contingent not on whether Shabbos you're allowed to be Deichel Shabbos in this situation, not allowed to be Deichel Shabbos situation. Rather, his whole svara is on the contingency of whether you're doing a mitzvah or not. According to Rabbi Meir, if you did an Erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, even though there was no dispensation to do the Milah, nevertheless, you consider to be a Tov B'Dvar mitzvah because L'maisa, you're doing a mitzvah. So nothing to do with dispensations. So that's the Gemara asks. Says Gemara, we're about 8 lines at the bottom. Rabbi Yossi, Madam Rav Chisda Rabbi Shimon, Madam Rabbi Yanai Rabbi Meir. How could that be? So Meshivin, they responded, Davar ben Meshivin Davar ben Rabbi Meir, Meshivin Davar ben Rabbi Shimon. Sorry, the way to explain it is it's possible. Oh, sorry. This is the way I think to read it. Reshivin, Darim Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon. What do you think Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon argue about this issue? Maybe Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon do not argue. In fact, about what we thought they argued about at the beginning of the Amud. At the beginning of the Amud, we thought Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon have a machlokas. What defines Tov B'Dvar mitzvah? Whether it's that you did a mitzvah like Rabbi Meir, or whether it has to do with the Shabbos being Nidcha, dispensation for Shabbos, like Rabbi Shimon. No. Maybe their machlok is not about that. Maybe, in fact, the machlok is the same machlok as Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Chisda. How so? Again, Meshivin, Dorim, Rabbi Shimon, they responded. Meshivin means base matters responded. Is that, do you think that the distinction between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon precludes the possibility that this is the machlokes. Could be that this is the machlokes precisely, meaning that we could say that according to Ashkechon Plugta, Ben Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon, B'Shiur. Maybe we could say the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon is precisely this point. Rabbi Meir holds that as let me start with Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says you have to have a shiur. What does shiur mean? You still have the remaining mitzvah. Shiur means a remnant. So you have to have a remaining mitzvah in front of you. Right? So it's supposed to be a chabur that didn't shech the Pesach. This supposed to be a kid who's bris milah is suitable to be today. Only then you interpret the mitzvah. Rabbi Meir holds no. Rabbi Meir holds even if there's no shiur, but rather it was earlier in the day. As long as there was a kid earlier today who I was supposed to have bris today, a chabur which earlier today shech the Pesach, that's sufficient to be told with var mitzvah. So we're revising our opinion in Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon precisely because. And again, I don't know where it came along with this, but because the Gemara decided to assume if Rabbi Chizah said, I'm going like Rabbi Shimon, Mistam Rabbi Yana is going like Rabbi Meir. So therefore, before we said, Rabbi Meir says, you don't have to have dispensation. All you got to have is a mitzvah. Now say no. Everyone holds you need dispensation. The shaila is what's the nature of the dispensation. Is that there must still be a dispensation in front of you and ahead of you at the time you did the Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah, or is it suffice even dispensation was prior, and thus Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon becomes Machlokes Rabbi Yana and Rav Chisda. Okay? So says one now, continuing with the details of this Machlokes. Ilan Tinokas Sveikas. These kids who are not sure what their status is. Mat Lavid Lon, how do you regard them? Kedavar Sheyesh Bo Kitzbo, Davar Shein Bo Kitzbo. Now, if you recall, we said there's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Eliezer, back on Mem Gimel Beis, said that Rabbi Meir only holds you Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah if it's he holds it's a Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah even if it's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Kitzba. Now, it's even in Shech L'Shem Tamid, right? You shech a cow L'Shem Tamid. Of course, there are how many tamidim can you bring in the day? 2, right? So there's a kitzvah. Can cows become tamidim? No. But nevertheless, even though you shech the cow l'shem tamid, it's still considered to be Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. That was Rabbi Lezer back here named Rabbi Meir. Here, Amem Talbeis Rabbi Yochanan said named Rabbi Meir. It's not so pashut. He said if you shech for a tamid, you are potter. It's Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah, but only if this animal is suitable to be a Pesach. It was a shecht on Erev Pesach, which comes on Shabbos, and now which is suitable to be a Pesach as a Tomid, that's Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. But now if you shecht the cow, what's the chiluk? What's the difference? So because the Gemara explained, he holds Rabbi Meir only patas b'davar she'ein lo kitzvah, so which has no limit as many who shecht the thing. Now it's true a Tomid does, but somehow that on the other side of the equation, that the animal you actually shechted was suitable to be a Pesach. Even though you shechted l'shem tamid, since on one part of the equation, what it was or what it's shechted for, it's for a davar she'elo kids, but that's called Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. So again, we have a machlokes. Or I may even say when you shecht something totally irrelevant, and there for a davar she'elo kitzvah, is it still considered Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah, or is it only something which is somewhat relevant, and therefore you can apply it the principle of davar she'elo kitzvah, and only then do I say that it's Teicha Shabbos, right? That is potter. So says the Gemara, these kids, what's their status? Davar she'elo kitzvah is like so which has a limit, like Tamid, or like so which has no limit, like Pesach. Now here there's a line missing. Carbonata puts it in, and there's a line missing and a typo. Should be say in tavdinu kedavar she'en lo kitzvah. If you're going to make it like something, I'm sorry, kedavar she'esh lo kitzvah, you're going to make like something that has a kitzvah, right? So the meaning like the case like Rabbi Lezer said. So then afilu even ein sham tinok acher lomu. Even if there isn't another kid to be mal, right? That's going back to the text itself. So it says in the text, what we introduce is if it's like Davar sheyesh lo kitzba, meaning even when there's a limit up, still Rabbi Meir says it's Toicher Shabbos. It's Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. So that means even if there's no other kid to be mal, even if there's no dispensation for Shabbos, doesn't matter. Even in Yeshech L'Shem Tamid, a carbon which is not suitable to be a Tamid, even after the Tmidim of the day are finished, it's still Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. Why? Because there was a possibility of making a Tamid today, right? So therefore, even if there are no kids around, except for this one, nevertheless, it's still considered to be a Torah B'Dvar Mitzvah. However, in Tav Dunun Kedavar She'ein Lo Kitzba, if you're going to say that specifically it has to be similar to a case She'ein Lo Kitzba, so in that case it means something where no matter how many you sacrifice today, they'll still be okay. Which means it has to be an animal which is suitable to be a Pesach. So if that's the case, in order to pat you for shechet, for being mal the wrong baby, you have to have a baby which is taka, a baby which is suitable for Shabbos. It's an interesting parallel. Davar sheyesh lo kitzba by karbanos is parallel to having no other babies except this one. Davar she'en lo kitzba by karbanos is parallel to having other babies except this one. Because Davar sheyesh lo kitzba means even though you exceeding a quota, nevertheless our mayor patters you. Again, it must be because it's 4 of you did a mitzvah, because in that case there's no dispensation necessarily, right? On the other hand, if you say it's like Davar she'en lo kitzba, and Rameir patters you even in that case, Rameir patters you the case specifically where ein lo kitzba, meaning where you have not exceeded a quota, because you can go beyond the quota. So in that case, by the kids, the only way it's going to be a parallel case, what's case of not exceeding the quota, if at least one kid here present at the time I'm doing the bris on the wrong kid is a kid for which Shabbos can be nidcha. So he represents the extension of the quota.
Didn't we say yesterday that bris milah on Shabbos is ein bo kitzvah because there's always thousands of unlimited number of babies that might have a bris on Shabbos? I thought we said that yesterday.
It could be we said that, but he's obviously this Gemara's argument. Okay, because the score holds so you have to have Lamais another kid. Now, period. Now the sugya starts over again, as Lieberman points out in Shabbos here. There are many parallel sugyas here which were just sewn together, right? So here the truth is everything is very disjointed. The conversation of Chis Rabbi Yana is disjointed from the previous discussion of Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan about whether Yevim Tonido, Shchuta, and Develo, like we saw yesterday, and then this conversation over here is disjointed about Davar sheyesh lo kitzba, Davar she'ein lo kitzba, and now we're coming to another disjointed conversation. So that's why he says that the Yerushalmi was stitched together of versions from various different yeshivas. So Isa Chamei, let's come see Talmud Kesarim. Could be. I think he mentions there too, but he does mention it at length in Shabbos page 209. Yeah, I don't have Talmud Kesarim, so I can't respond to that. Isachamei, let's come and see. Hiktiv Zmano Potter. If you this doesn't make any sense. Now, this is something which I did not mention now, but it's the Gemara in Shabbos. Everybody makes a big deal about Shabbos, which is that the Yerushalmi's Mishnah is the opposite of the Bavli's Mishnah. It's not the same Mishnah. The Yerushalmi's Mishnah says if you mal the Erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, then you mal a Sunday kid on Shabbos, you're potter. If you mal a Friday kid on Shabbos, you're chayav. Okay? That's what it says in the Mishnah there in the Yerushalmi. So in that the Yerushalmi asks, I understand. Hiktiv Zmano Potter. If you mal the Sunday one on Shabbos, you're exempt. The Ma'icha Zmano Chayev. If you mal the Erev Shabbos on Shabbos, you're Chayev. Now, obviously, this sugya is blatantly and completely and totally ignoring, as Liam points out, the Machlokas Rabbi Yana and Rav Chisda. Because Rabbi Yana and Rav Chisda said the whole thing has to do with dispensations, right? So therefore, of course, if you mal the Erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, you're chayev. Because you have no dispensation. Because guess what you did the Shabbos kid? You maled him on Erev Shabbos, right? So out went your dispensation out the window. So this sugi, which is tamea, which is astounded by the logic of being mechayev a guy who shechted the Erev Shabbos, who was mal the Erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, is clearly going back to the original svara that the issue here is only if there was an actual mitzvah done or not. As long as an actual mitzvah done, even though you're mechal Shabbos in the process, that's still to be told by mitzvah. If there's no actual mitzvah done, you're mechal Shabbos, and it doesn't do you any good. You're not going to be told by mitzvah. So Ataka Rav Huna Amar, therefore mechalfi masnisa. Rav Huna switches the order in the Mishnah and makes it like the Bavli. Rav Huna, of course, was a Babylonian, and therefore he learns the exact opposite. If you did the Sunday kid on Shabbos, you're chayev. If you did the Friday kid on Shabbos, you're potter. Okay, because of the Asa mitzvah. The Tani Yom Rabbi Shimon, like Rabbi Shimon said. Now, in Masechta Shabbos, I changed myself. This is Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Meir. I'm not sure. The reason why I did that, I know, is because Rabbi Shimon, this Rabbi Shimon we're about to say, does not square away with Rabbi Shimon, which we mentioned previously. But I'm not going to get into it now, whether it's necessary to change the gears or not. So let's just read it further. Ta'ayam Rabbi Shimon lo nechlok Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer should never argued. Amisha elamu achar Shabbos. Some of you would have had a kitmi on Sunday, mola b'Shabbos and maldim on Shabbos. Shu chayev. You're certainly chayev. Man echlu was machlokas. Amisha elamu be'erev Shabbos. Some of you had a kitmi on erev Shabbos. Who mola b'Shabbos was maldim kid on Shabbos. So again, the reason why I changed the gears over here from Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Meir, because this is identical to what Rabbi Meir said, according to the way the Gemara ascribes to him at the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Because the Gemara previously ascribed the svara of whether you did a mitzvah or not to Rabbi Meir, and to Rabbi Shimon the svara of whether you had dispensation or not. Then the Gemara went into a phrase in which it said everybody agrees that as far as dispensation, just see whether you need dispensation in front of you or even dispensation is already behind you. Now it seems that we're referring to the original explanation. But in the original explanation, it's still Rabbi Meir who's the one that said it's contingent on whether you're doing a mitzvah or not Rabbi Shimon. So therefore I changed the gear so when we did Shabbos, and I think it has to be changed, but I can't prove it to you. So then says the Gemara, Rabbi Yisrael Rabun said, Mikushya Makshli Rabbi Yanai. From these questions, we have a severe question, Rabbi Yanai. V'ushashachach u'mal shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. How? Because according to Rabbi Yanai, according to Rabbi Yanai, in the case we forgot, and mal the kid of Shabbos and erev Shabbos, there is no Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Because according to Rabbi Yanai, in that case, L'maisa, Shabbos is not given to be dispensed. Yet clearly, the way Rav Huna is learning, in that case, you are mal the Shabbos kid on Friday, you're still pater because when you mal the Friday kid on Shabbos, it's a mitzvah. So therefore, there's a refutation of Rabbi Yanai who said, again, the Babylonian way of reading the Mishnah, which is that you're pater for a Shabbos, you're potter for when you did a Shabbos kid, when you did an Erev Shabbos kid on Shabbos, and Chaim when you did a Sunday kid on Shabbos. That clearly is going against Rabbi Yanai, because like Rabbi Yanai, all of this is irrelevant. The question is whether you should have a capacity to be Doich Shabbos or not be Doich Shabbos. So therefore, clearly, the Mishnah, the way it's read according to the Bavli, because Rav Huna reads it, does not work according to Rabbi Yanai. Okay? Says Gemara, Rav Ada bar Achua Amar, Zudi Rabbi Shimon. All this is the words of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. This whole mess which we had are the words of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. However, Avol Rabbi Yosef has an extremely new and radical shita. Apilu Davar Shein B'Asiyasa Mitzvah. Even something where there's no mitzvah at all. Since you made a mistake and thought you were doing a mitzvah, you're potter.
Isn't that Rav Meir?
No. Rav Meir requires you to have done a mitzvah or to have dispensation. But Rabbi Yosef requires neither dispensation nor that you did a mitzvah. No matter what, he potters you. That's a special chiddush. Jewish heart. Okay? So, Piresh, and based on the sheet of Rabbi Yossi, very interesting halacha. Piresh eino chozer el atzitza maknes. Let's say if you finished the bris, but you left a lot of foreskin on, so you can only go back to the foreskin, which is going to be an impediment for the kashrus of the milah. However, that's the sheet of Rabbi Tanakama. On Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yossi, like Rabbi Yossi, afilu pirish, even you already went through the milah and stopped, the afilu pirish, the chozer avatzitza shem maknes milah, you can go back and even on the bits of foreskin which are not impediments to the milah. Why is that? Or what does that have to do with our discussion here? So says one, hide in Rabbi Yossi. Which Rabbi Yossi? Ha'id etina tzafar Yossi. Rabbi Yossi mar yontav rishon shel chag shechal yos bepesach shechal yos b'Shabbos. The first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbos. Shachav otzias lulav b'Reshus HaRabim. If you got it, took your lulav out of Reshus HaRabim, thought you're exempt from a chiyuv, they shotzia b'Reshus, because you took it out with permission. Now, the Mefarshim point out that this is shocking. Why is it b'Reshus? When are you in the midst of lulav? The moment you pick it up. So what Reshus do you have to take it outside? What does it mean, Reshus? So it must be, according to Rabbi Yossi, mitzvahs continue even after you finish, even after you're yotzei them. And mitzvahs continue even after you're yotzei them, so when you take the lulav out, it's considered to be lulav b'Reshus. Because although you're yotzei, when you picked it up, then continuously you consider to be a mitzvah, right?
It's part of the first.
Yes. The simile, af besaki shemila came. So this is true also by a milah knife. Even once you complete the milah, it's still the mitzvah. Right? You complete it, you sliced enough. But still the mitzvah continues, and that's why you can go back even on seats and she'ena maklim nisamilah on Shabbos. Right? Because the milah ma'isa still continues. And milah, of course, was dispensed. No? What?
Yeah, no, that logically follows. What about, he's talking about the knife though, is that the machshiring mitzvah?
No, that's the follow-up. So,
what would he say about machshiring?
No, that's only Rabbi Les, nobody else
It's also part of the mitzvah.
No, it's before.
But it's part of getting ready.
Doesn't matter, it has to be something after, part and parcel of the performance of the mitzvah. Matzah, okay. Well, it should be like Absaki Shamil can have a matzah cane. Also by matzah, if you're eating matzah and then you take some Reshus HaRabim, it should be potter, right? So it says when Mimada Rabbi Yochanan Div Rabbi Yossi Filu Pirish V'Chazar Filu Pirish V'Chazar Filu Atzitzut Shem Makvis Hamila. Since he says you go back, Hadamar should teach you Absaki Shamil can have a matzah cane. She says, but also by Tzaki Shamil and open a matzah. That's that you should be potter if you continue. You should be allowed to. Right, by Sakha Shmila, you took it out to Reshus HaRabim after the mitzvah was done. Since the entire day, you can go back and fix your milah, so therefore it should be considered to be potter because of Tov B'Dvar mitzvah. And the same thing is true also by the matzah. Even once you're out to mitzvah, you should be allowed to carry it. So this tells us, according to Rabbi Yossi, who's considered to be a Tov B'Dvar mitzvah? Anybody who thinks he has. Now I realize we have a problem here. The truth is, I think it's like this. Really, Rabbi Yochanan is arguing what we are substituting to Rabbi Yossi. Rav Ada Baruch Hu said that according to Rabbi Yossi, Tov Bar Mitzvah is potter even if he didn't do a mitzvah at all, which would be a valid explanation in of itself for why you took out the lulav. Why when you take out the lulav after you already eat to the mitzvah, you're still considered to be potter because you're Tov Bar Mitzvah. You think you still have a mitzvah upon you, which is why if you took out a milah knife, then afterwards you think you're potter. You think you're still doing a mitzvah, right? That you still have the mitzvah milah, so therefore you're potter. But like Rabbi Yochanan, that's not necessarily the case, because Rabbi Yochanan says, as far as Rabbi Yossi, that it says you're potter for taking the lulav out after you're raised in the mitzvah, is not because you're Tov Bar Mitzvah even though there's no mitzvah, but rather because it's Rabbi Yossi holds an ongoing mitzvah. And that's why you can take out, you can go back and do the foreskin, even that which is not makiv, because it's an ongoing mitzvah throughout the course of the day. So that would indicate that which Rabbi Yossi holds, that you can take the lulav and be potter, even though it was Rishus Harabim, is not because Tov Bar Mitzvah is potter even if he didn't do a mitzvah, rather because Rabbi Yossi holds that the mitzvah continues. You see the difference? It's a very blatant difference. Either Rabbi Yossi holds what he does because he holds that Tov Bar Mitzvah is potter even if you weren't doing mitzvah at all, or he holds as long as the mitzvah began to be performed that day, you can continue to perform whatever other components of the mitzvah you can drag along. So that what Rabbi Ada Bar Abba said at the beginning. Rabbi Ada Bar Chua said, "Zudi Rabbi Rishim Rabbi Yossi feel Davar Shem Asiyas Mitzvah Hol V'Toba L'Shem Mitzvah Potter." That explains Rabbi Yossi also by lulav. Why, even though you're not doing mitzvah, since you're Tov Bar Mitzvah, you're potter. When Rabbi Yochanan though says the root of Rabbi Yossi's shita is the svara which he uses by tzitzin she'ena makvim v'samila, by going back and cutting off the flecks of foreskin which are not required for the bris milah. He's saying the svara of Rabbi Yossi is a different one. What's the svara? Not the svara which we mentioned, that Tov Bar Mitzvah is potter. No. Because everybody says you can go back even the chatchila. What he's saying is that since the mitzvah is ongoing, so therefore you can go back and finish, and that's why perhaps by sukkah, by lulav, you can continue carrying the lulav even though you're into the mitzvah. So it's no raya the Rabbi Yossi, according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no raya the Rabbi Yossi holds that you're Tov Bar Mitzvah even if you didn't do a mitzvah at all. Okay? Is that all clear?
What would Rabbi Yossi?
I try again. I learned that it's all one long thing, Rav Ada Bar Chua and Rabbi Yochanan, but it's not. Rav Ada Bar Chua says, you know why Rabbi Yossi says that you're potter for picking up the lulav and take out Rishus Harabim? Because you're Tov Bar Mitzvah, even if you didn't do a mitzvah at all, right? You're ready to to the mitzvah. What mitzvah are you doing now? Nothing.
Well,
the milah knife.
You did do a mitzvah, but the mitzvah ended.
Right, but you're thinking about the previous sugya. You said he had dispensation that day already. Forget about that. This is a new thing, Rabbi Yossi. And even take the socket shomila. He's carrying the milah knife, right? What mitzvah is he doing by carrying the milah knife? So it must be that Tov Bar Mitzvah is part, even if he didn't do any mitzvah whatsoever. The longer this one says, no! This is a unique shita, Rabbi Yossi shita. It's not because of Tov Bar Mitzvah, it's because he holds a mitzvah's nimsheches. A mitzvah is continuous. Even once you're Yetzi, there's Keseder, more and more mitzvah. Just like we say by Pesach, the more matzah you eat, you more and more of a mitzvah you get. So too we hold the same thing by lulav and by milah knife. And that's why you can continue fulfilling the mitzvah. You're potter. Right, that's Machlokas Rabbi Yochanan Bar Abba. He argues. Okay. Now,
what if the bris was a Friday child done on Shabbos?
No, that's a peanuts, man. We're not discussing that anymore.
I know.
But that would be the nafkamina, you're right. No. Yeah, it would have to be the nafkamina, that's right. According to Rabbi Yossi, according to the first opinion that Rabbi Yossi holds, well, he still wouldn't be allowed the chatchila to go back and do the tzitzit.
thinks he's doing the mitzvah. He's doing getting the mitzvah, doing the bris on Shabbos, even though it wasn't Friday.
Yeah, so, but I think it's still going to be potter regardless. No, you're saying it's not potter if it's the.
Because there was no. The question is whether
the mitzvah didn't begin. Yeah, so it would be an afkamina. If you look at the mitzvah beginning, you look at Tov B'dvar mitzvah. That might be an afkamina. Okay, very good. So said Mimadam Rabbi Yochanan Divrei Rabbi Yossi Afilu Pir Shechotzer Afilu Atzitzah Shem Mag V'Zil Adamras, which should teach us Absaga Shemila Kein Abmatzah Shekein, that if you continue to carry to the rest of the day, you should be potter. If you ate matzah and then carried the matzah on Rishus Harabim. Right. You were biting on it as you carried it. Okay, Shachta Shalolochlev, you shechted the Gorbesa not for its eaters, Shalom Nuyim not for its subscribers, Larayim for uncircumcised, it's Mayim, or if it's Mayim on Friday, on a Shabbos afternoon, Chayav, because it didn't do properly. Lochlev Shalolochlev, you shechted for part Ochlim, part non-Ochlim, Nuyim for part subscribers, part non-subscribers, Mamulim Ura for people who are circumcised and uncircumcised. The term it's made for Torah people and Tomei people. Parts you're exempt because it's partially good still. Shachta needs a ba'mum. What if you shechta the korban Pesach on Shabbos and came at the ba'mum? Tough luck, chayiv. You have to be in chatas because it turned out your shechita was not a valid shechita. Shachta means to treva, but to say, sir, if you shechted the animal and became out to be a treva in its intestines, potter. You talk with Var Mitzvah, you thought it's okay. Shachta v'noda shemashko abayim asyoda. What happens if you shech the korban and then it became known that none of the owners, none of the subscribers are still affiliated with it? O shemesu, o shenit more, they died or became tamei. Potter, you're also part of the nation shalai b'rishus because you shechted with permission. At the time you shechted, you didn't know those problems. Rabbi Lezer said, "Lemi needs to call Rabbi Meir." Now, this is Rabbi Lezer's Lishitos. Rabbi Lezer said a couple of blot ago, he mentioned earlier tonight, he said that even if you shecht a calf, L'Shem Pesach, that Rabbi Lezer said the name that even if you shecht a calf, L'Shem Pesach, that's considered to be a Torah B'dvar Mitzvah. So it says Rabbi Lezer that Lamin Yitzchak Rabbi Meir, that our mission is necessary to tell us that even according to Rabbi Meir, that's only if you shechted a calf l'shem Pesach, but if you shechted ba'mum l'shem Pesach, you're chayiv. It does you no good. Okay, Asad Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Now Rabbi Lezer is going like Rabbi Shimon Lakish. What is Rabbi Lezer going like Rabbi Shimon Lakish? Rabbi Shimon Lakish, I'm going to go like the Mashbiach, change the Girsa. Shimon Lakish says, when's it should be Tov B'dvar mitzvah? Even if you didn't do a mitzvah, but you thought you were doing a mitzvah. Ma'am Reb, you thought. Mary Yochanan said you have to do a mitzvah. That's it has to be Yivimto Nida. That's Torah B'dvar mitzvah. Only if it's your Vamus and Nida, but not if it's two separate issues, right? Even there's a mitzvah involved. So to here says Muhammad Lemitzcha Reb Meir. Ask you the Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Rabbi Lezer, Shimon Lakish, who says the Torah B'dvar mitzvah here would be true by an egel, even by an egel which is shechted l'shem Pesach, right? Yeah. Rabbi Lezer like Rabbi Shimon that even if you shechted an egel l'shem Pesach, it's considered to be Tov B'dvar mitzvah. It can't possibly be a mitzvah. So can't it all be like Rabbi Yochanan says it has to dafka be your Yavamus in either, right? It's not possible. So Echnami says more. Rabbi Lezer is like Rabbi Shimon Lakish, who said that the Tov B'dvar mitzvahs, even if you didn't do a mitzvah, but you had a mitzvah in front of you, right? You shechted an egel l'shem Tami. It's no mitzvah, but you had a mitzvah in front of you. The mitzvah of Tami, that suffices. Okay? Kamar Rabbi Shimon Lakish Amar Yesh Bas Yoso mitzvah. Just like Shimon Lakish said, if you have a mitzvah in front of you, even if this same object is not the mitzvah, Ken Rabbi Lezer Amar Yesh Bas Yoso mitzvah. That as long as in the doing there's a mitzvah, even if not in the same object, that's right, it's going to be a Torah B'dvar mitzvah. I asked the Gemara, maybe you'll say my Tamar Shanu Shu Ba'mu Mein Dakol Achlif. So what are you going to say? So why is Ba'mu any different? If you shech the Ba'mu, an echo tonight. Yivshech the Baal Mum. Sometimes they don't notice. Yivshech the Baal Mum for the purpose of a Korban Pesach. Steht doch in our Mishnah that you're chayav. Why is that not a Torah b'dvar mitzvah? Rabbi Eliezer says, it's only Yishech an egel l'shem Pesach, or an egel l'shem Tamid, but not a ba'amum l'shem Pesach, or ba'amum l'shem Tamid. No, I'm asking you, what's the chiluk? If you all like Reish Lakish, you don't need dafka mitzvah, but a possibility of a mitzvah, so what's the chiluk, right? Why is there a difference?
The egel could be used for another korban.
Exactly what it says. Shh, don't give away the answers. Says the Gemara, Shan in time of Shani Ushu Ba'amu ain't dark l'schalev. Harei egel ain't dark l'schalev. It can't be because you don't switch, because Ba'amu is not, nobody's going to switch Ba'amu and say it's kosher korban. Also cow, nobody switches a cow and says it's a kosher korban. Van Rabbi Eliezer says, even a calf is Torah b'dvar mitzvah. So it says, I'm Rabbi Yisrael, he said the truth is, in Yisbar Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yochanan Asai. Came going like Rabbi Yochanan, who said the dafka have to have a mitzvah in front of you, like Yivam Tonida. Right? Then it's your Vama who's a Nida, so there's a mitzvah. It's just that the mitzvah was not relevant at that time. That's Torah b'dvar. You can. It doesn't normally switch. Meaning that a Ba'amum. Let me see, make sure I get this right. Yeah, so according to this is what you said. A Ba'amum is darkly schalev, meaning that you can't. An egel is darkly schalev, meaning it's kosher for korbanos. Not for this korban, it's kosher for some korbanos. A Ba'amum ain't darkly schalev. A Ba'amum can never use for a korban. So even like Rabbi Yochanan, an egel shechted for the purpose of Tamid, or an egel shechted for the purpose of Pesach, Ken Zayin, it's a valid. It could have been a valid korban. So even Rabbi Yochanan's criteria are met. Rabbi Yochanan's criteria is there should be a mitzvah here, which can be done with this object, such as Vim Tonida. There is a mitzvah here of korbanos, which could be done with this object, because even egel is good for not korbanos, some korbanos, just not for these korbanos, but for some korbanos. So that works. As opposed to Ba'amum ain't dak l'schalev, egel dak l'schalev. What about a Ba'amum? Shekei nitzchol chalel. Ba'amum, you can't make a korban. What do you have to do with the Ba'amum? So one thing you can do with it. What's that? Be mechalel it. What's that?
You let it drain.
Redeem it. So therefore, it's the it can't by that's the difference. Then egel can be some korban, or ba'amun can be no korban, and that even like Rabbi Yochanan who says you need that mamash mitzvah in front of you, egel has shaykh somewhere to the mitzvah of korban, if not for this specific one. So that's the conventional way of learning this.
Is the lashon a little strange? Ain't darker less chalif? Should it be ef shoulders chalif?
Yeah, and besides that, the order's messed up. It should be egel dark l'schalev, ba'amun ain't dark l'schalev, shekei nitzchol l'chalev. Right? So the order is messed up. But there's a beautiful, beautiful shot I saw here. Lieberman brings down from Reb Chatzkel Abramsky. Yedidi Agri Abramsky. Yeah. Says they wrote two competing works on the Tosefta. Lieberman wrote the Tosefta Kipshuta, and Reb Chatzkel Abramsky wrote the Chazon Yechezkel. They're both major works on the Tosefta in this century. So, but he brings out beautiful shot. So Vasai Mushak. He says the Girsa here is Reb Chatzkel writes his name of his uncle, his father-in-law. He says it's Pshadish Nitzacha Lehillel, not Lechalo, Lehillel. What's the pshat? It said back at the beginning of the perek that Rabbi Hillel came up from Bavel for 3 reasons, and one of them was to tell them in Eretz Yisrael that he can't bring an egel as a Korban Pesach. Even though it says, there's a pasuk which says, "V'zavachta Pesach l'Hashem Elokecha tzonu bakar." So Hillel came to tell him, you should know that pasuk is going to Chagiga, not on Pesach. But says according to his Girsa, egel is also shaykh to be a Korban Pesach, if not for Hillel's drasha. And that's why, what does it mean, Egel Darkilus Chalech? Because of the pasuk, people can think an Egel could be a Val Korban Pesach. And that's why that's what Eliezer say, if you shech an Egel L'Shem Pesach, because before Hillel's drosha, somebody could have made a mistake, so that's why Egel is told it's bar mitzvah. But if you shecht a Baal Mum, nobody ever thought a Baal Mum was a kosher Pesach. Halfway of a fella. Isn't that an amazing shot? So that he says, and Lieberman gives Askama, he says, he thinks that fits him well with the derech of the Yerushalmi. That's how the Yerushalmi would express such an idea. Okay. So says Gemara, this is just a parenthetical remark, not parenthetical, but it's a brief remark that the Mishnah said that if you have a trephus, which is a hidden trephus, you're potter. But if you have a trephus, which is a revealed trephus, you're chayav, because obviously revealed trephus is tantamount to a Baal Mum. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Shimoni. Now Rabbi Yochanan said, till now, Rabbi Yochanan is saying our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says our Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. What does it mean, Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Shimon says that there is. Rabbi Shimon says that if since there's no mitzvah involved here, you're chayav, even though you think you're doing a mitzvah. But according to Rabbi Meir, the moment you think you're doing a mitzvah, you're potter, which really is what we said about Rabbi Yossi previous to this Mishnah. But somehow Rabbi Yochanan had a different sheet in this matter, because again, Rabbi Yochanan before argued in the Sfar Rabbi Yossi, so I tried to explain to you guys at length. Rabbi Yochanan said Rabbi Yossi's Sfar is a different one, so it has to do with whether the mitzvah continues. So he ascribes that svara that you're potter as long as you thought to do a mitzvah to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon says that's not. You said that? Okay, you're very good. So Rabbi Shimon is the one who said, so our Mishnah is called Rabbi Shimon, and according to today, even according to him, according to him, you're chayav if there isn't mamash or mitzvah. Rabbi Chaim Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Yisrochina said, "Hamoshech yodam mipischo." If somebody's moshech yodam pischo, in other words, all the subscribers leave. Let's go in the other base matter. Did you done Marvia? I didn't done Marvia. All right, because we only did a blot. All right. Well, we'll just do the next couple of minutes, then we'll stop. If somebody removes his hand from his Korban Pesach, it's brought as a shlamim. It defaults down to a shlamim. Rabbi Yochanan mar shlamim kshem. It's a shlamim which is kosher, you can eat it. Rabbi Yochanan mar shlamim psulim. It's a shlamim, but it's possible. Nobody's allowed to eat it. You can't eat it. It's possible. Ask more about Nina Potter. Now it says in our Mishnah, if you shechted the Pesach, which has no owners, you're potter. Sarvi man, we think potter means for kosher. Potter and kosher means it's edible. No, potter or apostle. It's a shlamim psulim. You can't eat it. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein l'cha Pesach gufo karev shlamim. There's no Pesach which can be brought as a shlamim, which is kosher, unless it was lost. The name tzamiach was found after the ba'alim achieved kapara. In our Mishnah, where there are no bailim, then you can't. It's not a Pesach kosher. Vatzina potter doesn't say potter. Something maybe we thought to mean say that means potter is kosher. No, passing late they said potter means puzzle. It's potter because you're told it's bar mitzvah, but it's puzzle. You can't eat the shlamim. Rav Shmuel Amar is a principle we had in Bavli not too long ago. Amar kol shomer v'chatas mesa kayetze bo b'pesach gufo karev shlamim. Don't worry, the Yerushalmi speak about a great length at the end of the ninth parak. The same idea we had in Bavli in the ninth parak, that any time it's a chatos dies by Pesach, it's such a devastating change that it becomes shlamim. As opposed to a chatos which grazes, then that also grazes when it's a shlamim, it has to be redeemed. All right. What can you do? We'll have to stop here for tonight.